2. Check 1, 2.
There's Gar, Carolyn. I'm looking to see who's here. Nobody I know.
You know me, Chris.
Hello. We're going to start a little bit late waiting for one of the other commissioners.
Okay, if I can have everybody's attention, please.
Yeah, speak, you have to speak
Okay.
really close.
Stand up.
That works better. Are we rolling now? Live stream? Yep. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Linda DeVlake Hillman. I'm the president and a professional member of the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. The meeting of the New Mexico Real Estate Commission is hereby called to order. It is 9:05 a.m. on January 13th, 2025. Mr. Bryant, will you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. President DeVleke Gilman,
Present.
Vice President Smith, he's absent. Secretary Hedinga,
Here.
Commissioner Katnack,
Here.
and Commissioner Vasquez. Here. Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Also joining and participating in this meeting is Assistant Attorney General Blaine Moffett by Zoom with the New Mexico Department of Justice, as well as BCD staff members, Team Manager Jared Bryant, Education Administrator Scott Latham, Compliance and Investigations Team Manager Kathleen Roybal, Boards and Commissions Deputy Director Amanda Lewis, and Regulation and Licensing Chief General Counsel Kevin Graham. Today's public meeting is conducted pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, Sections 10, 15, 1 to 4. Commissioners, staff, and members of the public are joining us in person at the Greater Albuquerque Association of Realtors in Albuquerque, New Mexico. There is also a live broadcast of the meeting. Individuals wishing to provide public comment virtually were required to submit a written request to the commission email by Monday, January 10th, 2025, or attend in person. The public portions of today's meeting will be recorded. The closed session portions are not public and will not be recorded or viewable by any attendees. Items discussed in the closed session may be voted upon in the general session when the session resumes. Continuing education is granted only for the public portions. When the commission moves into closed session, the public meeting line will remain open and all attendees will remain muted. Attendees may remain in the public meeting during closed session. Commissioners will return to the public meeting once the closed session is complete. The mission of the New Mexico Real Estate Commission is to protect the public and enhance the professional competence of real estate brokers. The New Mexico Real Estate Commission was created by state law in 1959 and charged with enforcing real estate license law and the Real Estate Commission rules. We will now move to approval of agenda. I come to them as that phrase was left out. Do I hear a second? Any discussion?
Could you repeat where that's being added, please?
Yes. Sorry.
I think she's waiting to. Do we need to take roll call, President, or are we waiting to discuss the actual?
Yeah, we're still in discussion.
Okay, thank you.
On D, budget request discussion item and to add possible action. So D incorporates requests for the reports, request of a new position line item budget request. Item E, add contact information to PDF rulebook. So that would be also an action item with a discussion item with possible action. F as in Frank, license screening. Item G as in George, RLD staff updates, discussion and possible action. Item I, property management best practices, discussion and possible action. J, public awareness program, discussion and possible action. N as in Nancy, discussion of 1-point contact, discussion and possible action. You don't on yours? Stops at L. It was on my final copy of the agenda. Okay.
Yeah. This,
Is it on yours? Okay. Are we good? Do we have you want to take a roll?
Yes, Madam President. President DeLee Gilman.
Yes.
Vice President Smith, also absent. Secretary Hedinga.
Here. Yes.
Commissioner Katnack.
yes.
And Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, the January 13th, 2025 agenda has been unanimously approved and amended per your request.
Thank you. Do we have approval of the minutes from, you know what, I'm going to table this because we don't have any input from the DOJ's office, since not all the commissioners have the minutes that we need to approve. I'm going to table that until later in the meeting. I've texted the DOJ representative to see if he can weigh in on that. It's possible we could give him the minutes to review right now, but we can do that. So I'm going to table B, and I'm going to table C, 1 and 2. Okay. President's report. Can everybody hear me okay? Not really? How about this? Is this better? Wow. Okay. It's like a rock star. President's update. Good morning, commissioners and guests. The mission, again, from the New Mexico Real Estate Commission, is to protect the public and enhance the professional competency of real estate brokers through regulatory oversight, education, and effective communication. I want to welcome you today to the New Mexico Real Estate Commission meeting. As we gather today, we are reminded of the vital mission that guides our work: to protect the public, support the integrity of the real estate profession, and ensure that every New Mexican benefits from a fair and thriving real estate market. Our mission is not without its challenges, especially as we navigate current difficulties with communication and collaboration with the Regulation and Licensing Department. With the RLD representatives in the room, this meeting offers an opportunity for open dialogue, shared understanding, and progress towards resolving the inefficiencies that have impacted our collective efforts. As we turn our attention to one of the most vital components of our state's economy, we must consider the role of the real estate market, not just as an economic driver, but as a foundation for community growth and stability. Let's discuss this real estate market and its importance to the economy. The real estate market remains a cornerstone of New Mexico's economy. In 2023, the industry contributed $20.9 billion, accounting for 16.1% of the state's gross domestic product. This significant contribution underscores the industry's vital role in driving growth and prosperity throughout the state. I want to break this down. The total economic impact of the real estate industry and related activities in New Mexico amounted to $107,800 per home purchase. That's a lot. This figure encompasses the diverse components of a real estate transaction, including retail expenditures by consumers, essential services provided by title companies and attorneys, materials and labor contributed by contractors, among other significant factors. These numbers highlight the scale of the real estate industry's contributions and the interconnected nature of related industries that benefit from housing and real estate activities. In 2024 alone, approximately 17,667 residential sales occurred. This is only residential, and there are land and commercial sales to be considered. This is the impact on New Mexico's economy. I want to thank Kathy Colvin of Vista Encantada Realtors for providing the statistics on real estate's economic impact, and Tigo Venturi of Real Brokers for these economic and sales figures. Both individuals have conducted thorough research and are available to further elaborate on their findings if needed. Now I want to reflect on the importance of licensed and educated brokers. Given the real estate industry's substantial impact, we must continue to prioritize the education and professional development of licensed brokers. By ensuring that brokers are well informed and adhere to the highest standards of practice, we not only benefit consumers, but also bolster market stability and support the overall health of New Mexico's economy. The critical role of the Commission in upholding these standards cannot be overstated. Now I would like to address the budget concerns and communication inefficiencies with RLD. I would also like to talk about the ongoing concerns made by constituents regarding inefficiencies in communication practices currently in force with the Regulation and Licensing Department. As these issues persist, they hinder the ability of brokers and the Commission to work effectively within the regulatory framework. Addressing these inefficiencies is crucial for improving operational transparency and fostering a more productive stakeholder relationship. Additionally, I want to express concern about our budgetary constraints. The lack of regular budget updates from RLD has left the Commission unable to effectively plan and allocate resources. It is imperative that we receive timely and detailed budget information to ensure we can meet our statutory obligations and to serve the public effectively. As an example of the impact of excellent communication and collaboration, I recently assisted a licensee who was facing an emergency licensing situation. With the support of the licensing department staff, we resolved this issue swiftly, providing the licensee with much needed assurance during her medical crisis. This efficient resolution highlighted the importance of clear communication, prompt action, and a focus on the licensee's immediate needs, qualities that should define the gold standard for our department. Now for our appointed responsibilities. As commissioners, our appointed responsibility is to abide by and support the statutes and rules of the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. Upholding these statutes and regulations ensures that we fulfill our duty to serve the public and support the integrity of the real estate industry. We must ensure that mistakes or lack of guidance do not lead to violations of the statutes we are sworn to uphold, as such lapses could undermine the public trust and the integrity of the Commission. Accordingly, since the NMREC serves approximately 12,000 licensees in New Mexico, the Commission will require adequate resources to fulfill our mission. We need adequate budget projections allowing for this commission to serve our industry with full-time industry-specific investigators, adequate licensing support staff, and education support. Our requirements are unique to the industry. Multitasking investigators cannot adequately investigate the nuances of a real estate transaction. These functions are essential to our statutory requirements. We are not merely a punitive regulatory body. We are also here to protect and assist both the consuming public and the real estate community. As such, our methods should be both fair and transparent. As we progress, I encourage continued dialogue with our constituents and collaboration with RLD to resolve procedural, staffing, and communication challenges and ensure our industry remains a pillar of New Mexico's economy. Your input and dedication to these efforts are invaluable as we achieve these goals. I am willing to offer feedback on staffing choices and duties to ensure a more efficient and effective implementation of our responsibilities. Thank you again for your commitment and contributions to the Commission and the real estate industry. Interim Executive Secretary's report, Mr. Bryant.
Yes, Madam President. So there's no new business to report as far as staffing levels with the particular real estate section of RLD and boards and commissions. We have 2 new licensing specialists and 1 new investigator, which is Jiva Vara sitting next to me. She actually is involved with the real estate. She worked as admin, handling a lot of the information on those cases. And now moving her into an investigative position is going to help broaden some of that knowledge that we've been seeking.
Thank
But
you.
that's all we have at this time.
Education Advisory Committee report, Mr. Latham.
The chair, Jen Cody, is going to go ahead and give that report this morning.
Okay. Be sure and just choke on this microphone so everybody can hear you.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
All right. Thank you so much for having us. And President DeFlick-Kilman, thank you for that statement. We really value what we do at the EAC, and we work hard to encourage new education and new educators to come forth because we want to grow our knowledge base when it comes to real estate. I'm elected chair again this year, which I'm excited about. We are going to continue to tighten up how we work on the inside, just making sure our applications are cleaner, making sure that our systems on the when we run our meetings are more efficient. Again, we are still looking for some new members, so if there's anyone interested, we would really like to get a perspective outside of Albuquerque. We do have some active applications, and we will be reviewing those applications, but we were review the next year's core course that we actually take have an extra meeting for that. So we've accommodated that to allow a full meeting schedule plus an extra meeting to go over the core course. Again, we would really love perspectives from other assets of real estate, not just residential. So if we've got people who are in commercial or farm and land, ranch, anything like that, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, you don't have to have a real estate license to be a part of our committee. So we are looking for other perspectives. So if there's anyone in your community that you happen to know that would be a good fit for the EAC, a good fit is someone that can show up to meetings, have an opinion, and cares about education and professional growth of other brokers or realtors. That's what we're looking for. So again, we are looking for more diversification outside of just the Albuquerque area. Our meetings are on Zoom. They're limited to 9 to 1, so they're only 4-hour meetings once a month. So there's a little bit of extra work that goes with that, like reviewing online courses, but it's very minimal. So I just want to make sure I'm transparent with the commitment we're asking for. With that, if you have a desire to teach or to write a new class, please come before us. We would love to work with you to get new classes implemented, encourage new instructors to come aboard, because different perspectives make our marketplace a better place. And so we're really trying to encourage that. And if you have any questions, Scott's always a good resource at the commission, or I'm happy to help as well. So we just wanted to make sure that everyone knows this year we're looking to grow our committee and also grow our instructors and classes.
And then at this time, we would like to ask you to approve the minutes from the December 11th, 2024 meeting and the January 6th, 2025 meeting.
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
I move that the minutes be approved. Second. Can you call the roll? Yes.
Yes, Madam President. President DeVlieg Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, who's absent. Secretary Hettinga,
I'll abstain. I did not receive the minutes.
abstain noted. Commissioner Katnack. Just calling a roll.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, December 11th, 2024 and January 6th, 2024 EAC meeting minutes are approved minus Secretary Hettinga's abstention for being abstained.
I move that the January 6th minutes be approved,
The January 6th,
2025. That's on the approval of minutes.
correct. December 11th, 2024 and January 6th,
Okay.
2025.
So that was included in the vote.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Latham, approved course list update.
The approved course list will be up as soon as or shortly after the meeting's over, so that I can get all the new courses that were approved. I recently have put up a approved sponsor list. Most of those do have web links that you can click on to see what they're offering. We are still trying to continue to get that completed so that everybody has a website for their sponsor.
That's perfect. At what location is that web link?
It's
What part
under
of the
the
page?
education portion of the
Okay.
tab. It's the second one down. I believe it's labeled EAC forms is what it's going to be under in that drop down box there. But when you go to the main page, you'll see for education, and you'll click on that and then follow that.
That's a
through.
great help. That'll be able to really get people to understand what's being offered at any point in time. Hopefully, eventually in one location, you'll be able to see all the education being offered. Rules Committee reports. I have been in contact with the registrar's office to get a clean copy to start the redlining. I've not heard back from them. It does take a while, but that's the only report I have, is that we do have the majority of the rules changes reviewed. We just now need to start the redlining process. Mr. Smith isn't online for the complaint committee report. Yeah, he's ill. He wasn't able to make it. Shall we have a discussion about the complaint committee? We'll do that in the agenda, further on in the agenda. Investigators report, Ms. Roybal. Be sure and attack that microphone.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to give you an update as to how many complaints we currently have open.
Thank you.
We have a total of 135 complaints open at this time. 85 of those are still under investigation. 5 are pending review of the complaint committee. 21 will be discussed today during executive session. 8 are pending at the Attorney General's office. 3 are pending hearing, and 15 are pending compliance with the settlement agreement or final order. The only other thing that I have to report, and as Mr. Bryant mentioned a while ago, we have promoted Jermelin Vivar to state investigator for the Real Estate Commission, which leaves another vacancy for our administrative position. However, that closed, I believe, last week, so hopefully we'll have interviews for that shortly.
So what was that administrative position?
This is just the administrative position, so they handle opening up the complaints, making sure the files are complete, that sort of stuff. So
And where are those job offerings posted?
they're posted on the state personnel website.
Okay.
And that is all that I have to report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A new business election of officers, discussion and action item.
Madam President, I wish to say,
Okay.
I wish to speak to that item. I would like to suggest that we keep the president-elect secretary as is for this next year. We've had a lot of changes. We've had a lot of disruption and things, and I feel that we need some consistency. And so I would recommend that we keep it as is. So I do move that we maintain the president-elect, or vice president, and secretary as is for 2025.
I second.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Yes, Madam President. Madam President DeVliet-Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, who is absent, Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack, and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously, minus Mr. Smith being present.
Okay. All right then. Open meetings resolution. I believe this was an agenda item for the DOJ, but I could read the Open Meetings Act if requested and handle it that way.
Okay. If you'd like to, Madam President, you're more than welcome to read the entirety of it. I don't believe much has changed within the context of the legality of it. And it's really up to you how you wish to proceed.
I'll read it. New Mexico Real Estate Commission 2025 Annual Open Meetings Act Resolution, $10. Whereas the New Mexico Real Estate Commission is a public policy-making body within the state of New Mexico and therefore subject to requirements of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, sections 10-15-1, 2-4, and whereas recognizing the legislative intent of the Open Meetings Act and policy of this state that all persons are entitled to the greatest possible information regarding the affairs and actions of our government, public participation must be accommodated and public notice provided for any meeting among a quorum discussing business of our public body. And whereas the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1D, specifically requires every public body in the state to annually review and decide what additional public notice is reasonable for its meetings, including the methods and time frame of such notice. And whereas all obligations of the Open Meetings Act are followed by our public body, even if not expressly restated in this resolution. And now therefore be it resolved that public notices, our notices shall be provided to the public and will include the time, date, location of the meeting and information on how to obtain a copy of the agenda. Public notices shall be provided at minimum through the following methods. Posted prominently on our website at, I won't read the link, posted, but this can all be found in the Public Meetings Act booklet. Posted prominently at the Regulation and Licensing Office at 5500 San Antonio Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico 87109. Meeting agendas shall be available for every meeting and will include a list of specific items of business to be discussed or voted on. Agenda items shall be written with sufficient description so that the average person can reasonably understand the subject to be discussed and can anticipate when a vote or formal action may occur. Agendas shall be finalized and posted as soon as practical, but no less than 72 hours prior to each meeting and made available through the following methods. Posted again on the RLD website, under boards and commissions, and then you look in the individual board. Posted prominently at our office at 5500 San Antonio Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico 87109. Our regular meetings are those anticipated to be held on a periodic basis, weekly, monthly, or quarterly, and shall be identified annually. Public notice shall be provided as soon as practicable, but no less than 10 calendar days prior to a meeting. Special meetings are those held outside of regular meetings due to unforeseen circumstances or other need warranting an additional meeting. Special meetings should be limited to agenda items that cannot reasonably wait until the next regular meeting. Public notice shall be provided as soon as practical, but no less than 72 hours prior to a special meeting. Emergency matters, our public body may, under extraordinary circumstances, consider and act on limited emergency matters in a noticed meeting, separate meeting, or through any other collaborative process appropriate under the circumstances pursuant to Section 10(5)(f). Reasonable efforts shall be made to provide public notice before, when possible, and after any emergency matter is considered, including an explanation at the next meeting of any action taken and the circumstances creating the emergency. Inadvertent quorums. The public body shall not discuss business among a quorum outside of a noticed meeting. Situations or events in which a number of our members sufficient to constitute a quorum are present, but which are not convened for the purpose of discussing public policy, such as a social event, do not implicate this OMA. However, we will disclose the occurrence of any such situations or events when practical during a public meeting to mitigate concerns of those non-compliance. Americans with Disabilities Act notice, in addition to the information specified above, all our notices and agendas shall include the following language. If you are an individual with a disability or other need requiring a reader, amplifier, interpreter, or any other form of auxiliary aid or service to attend or participate in the meeting, please contact our staff to discuss your accessibility needs at least 1 week prior or as soon as possible by emailing Jared Bryant at rldrealestate.comsn@rld.nm.gov or calling 505-222-9824. Remote participation. Our public body allows its voting members to participate remotely when it is difficult or otherwise impossible for the member to attend in person. Pursuant and subject to conditions of Section 10(15)(1)(c),
Do we have a motion to adopt that, President?
Sure. I make the motion to adopt the OMI.
second.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll
Thank
go ahead
you.
and take roll.
Mhm.
Madam President Julie Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, he is absent. Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
We have approval unanimously for the adopted OMA for 2025-2026. On the next section C under new business, we have Mr. Chief General Counsel Kevin Graham to give the PowerPoint and some information and definition on administratively attached as explained by New Mexico State RLD.
Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Good morning, Madam President, and members of the commission. I do have a PowerPoint here. I'm going to try to share that now for a presentation. All right. Screen gets a little confusing with both the PowerPoint and the Zoom running there, but I think we'll be able to work our way through it. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic that I was asked to come and talk about was administrative attachment, or what it means to be an administratively attached board or commission to a larger state agency. Here at the RLD, we actually have 28 different administratively attached boards and commissions. This is not unique to the RLD. There are a number of other state agencies that also have administratively attached boards and commissions or other authorities that are attached to them. They are generally referred to under the law as a board, but boards actually defined as including many different types of entities, including commissions or councils and other topics or other names of entities. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the law here. The first thing I've got for you, that'll be on the slide, are some of the statutes that I'm going to be referring to. The first one there in 6129 4.3, that's the straight from the Real Estate Commission Act. Then we're going to go down into the Administrative Attachments Act or Administrative Authorities. We'll go to the the Regulation and Licensing Department Act at 916.6. And then we're going to work our way through some of the budget bills in the General Appropriations Act that have been passed since 2014 on. And the reason I bring those up is because our General Appropriations Acts are adopted by the legislature as acts each year, they are actually enactments of law. So they carry the full weight of statute. So we'll walk through some of those. I know there were some discussions at the last meeting, I believe, or perhaps the meeting before that, with some references to current statutes on the books and questions that the Real Estate Commission had. So I'm going to talk a little bit before we get into those statutes about statutory interpretation. And this becomes critical in situations where you have statutes dealing with something of the same topic or perhaps overlapping on a topic, but maybe there are conflicts between the wording of those different statutes. I'm not going to go into a full dissertation, law school class here, but the general premises that have been adopted by the New Mexico Supreme Court, these are common to most states and the U.S. Supreme Court. When you're interpreting statutes, if there is some sort of a conflict, the first thing you do is you look at the plain wording of the statute and you try to implement the plain wording of the statute. If, however, there is a conflict between the statutes or more than one statute, if there's conflict, then you read each in harmony as much as possible. But if you can't read them in harmony and they do contradict one another, you go to a number of sub-steps. The first is that if there's a conflict, the more specific statute controls over a more general statute. And the emphasis that the courts put here is that the legislature, when they deal with something more specifically, that more closely shows their intent. And so you look at a more specific statute always controls over a general statute. If you have statutes that are somewhat similar in their level of specificity, then you're going to look at the more recent statute. And they're going to say that the more recent statement of the legislature is intended to be the most current expression of the legislature's intent. There are a few more things that can be gone into there when looking at the specificity and looking at recent intent. One of those is a finding by the Supreme Court that when the legislature does something, they always intend it. Even if there might be an appearance that there was a mistake made, if they adopted it into law, if they did it, they intended it. Conversely, if they didn't do something, they intended not to do it. Okay. So with those premises in mind, let's go to the first statute, going straight to the Real Estate Commissions Act. It says that the Real Estate Commission is administratively attached to the Regulation and Licensing Department. 2001, expression of the legislature's intent. It's been that way ever since. There have been no changes to that statute since. We go to and look at the more general statutes dealing with administrative attachment and what that means. Look at the Executive Reorganization Act that starts at 9-1-1 Mexico statutes. And one of the ones that I know has been brought up is 9-1-7. Here is 9-1-7. This is again the most general expression of the legislative intent regarding administrative attachment. As you'll see from the sections there, an agency attached to a department for administrative purposes only exercises the functions independent of the department without approval, submits a budget request to the department, submits reports required of it by law or the governor through the department. If the department to which an agency is attached, and where B is in boy now for administrative purposes only, shall provide, if mutually agreed, budgeting, record keeping, and related administrative assistance to the agency, and include the agency's budgetary request as submitted and without changes in the department's budget submission. C, subsection C, is what I'm going to call your attention to and underline some of the first words there. Unless otherwise provided by law, the agency shall hire its own personnel in accordance with the Personnel Act. I know this was brought up at a recent meeting, and there was emphasis on that the commission expressed some interest in being able to choose their own employees. But remember, we're dealing with the most general expression of law, and we have to go to a more specific expression of law if you're talking about something which is, if there is a more specific expression of law, particularly if there is conflict between those statutes. So we're going to turn to the Regulation and Licensing Department Act, Section 9-16-6, which of course is specific to the RLD. Figure up here on the screen, so instead of going back and forth from glasses, I'm going to try to read off that one. But this describes what the superintendent of the Regulation and Licensing Department is responsible for. It is the superintendent's duty to manage all operations of the department and administer and enforce the laws with which the superintendent, the department, or a division of the department is charged. I'll reference to that, or a division of the department. That's going to come up in a few minutes. And B, perform a superintendent's duties. Superintendent has every power expressly enumerated in the laws, whether granted to the superintendent of the department or any division of the department. In accordance with those laws, the superintendent shall, 1, exercise general supervisory and appointing authority over all departmental employees. B, within the limitations of available appropriations and applicable laws, employ and fix the compensation of those persons necessary to discharge the superintendent's duties. So we have a specific provision to the superintendent hiring every employee employed with the RLD. And what I will tell you is that the employees here today, myself, who perform services for the Real Estate Commission, just like they perform services for all 28 administratively attached boards and commissions to the RLD, are employees of the RLD. Go to the next statute. It's actually continuing with 9-16-6, 9. These are the duties of the superintendent in regards to providing services to administratively attached agencies. Provide administratively attached agencies assistance as necessary to avoid duplication of services, coordinate activities, resolve problems of mutual concern, and C, provide implementation of licensure processes, budgeting, record keeping, procurement, contracting, hiring, and supervision of staff and related administrative and clerical assistance for administratively attached agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the attorney for the Regulation and Licensing Department. My client primarily is superintendent of the Regulation and Licensing Department. We then report to the governor as an executive agency. I am not the attorney assigned to advise the Real Estate Commission as your general counsel. That's why the Attorney General is assigned that duty, and excuse me, Department of Justice has attorneys for you that they will assign to be your legal advisors. I can tell you, however, that as the attorney for the Regulation and Licensing Department, when I interpret these statutes and I resolve them in a manner that the New Mexico Supreme Court has said we are to analyze and review statutes, the more specific law here is the Regulation and Licensing Department Act that speaks specifically to the duties of the superintendent and how staffing shall be handled when providing assistance to administratively attached agencies. I'll also point out, it's a little unclear because of the way that Zoom is here, but that statute was most recently amended in 2021. In fact, since the last time the Executive Procedures Act was amended, it's been amended at least 4 times, including 2021. So the more specific law dealing with the subject of administrative attachment, who does the employing of the personnel for those administratively attached agencies, is the Regulation License Department Act. But let's look at even more recent expressions of law in regards to the budgeting of the Real Estate Commission. There have been a number of changes to budgeting processes within the state, but the one that is probably the most applicable and I think really speaks to the issues that have been on the Real Estate Commission's mind is that of how the budget is assigned by the legislature for the Real Estate Commission. Any of you who are familiar with these processes or involved with budgeting for the Real Estate Commission prior to 2014, or actually prior to 2015, up through 2014, would have seen in the General Appropriations Act that was adopted each year a specific budget for the Real Estate Commission. There's slides here. If you look at the 2014 Senate Bill 313, which was the final adopted General Appropriations Act of 2014, so that was actually the budget for FY 2015. This is how things were done up to that point. First page of the act just shows this is the General Appropriations Act of 2014. Going to the section when you get down in, this is more than a 200-page bill every year. So we get to the RLD's budget section. And I apologize that the print here, when I tried to pull this off the website for the legislature, I could not get it to give me a larger print than this for a slide. Looks like it's readable. It's a little tight. You maybe have to grab your glasses like that. But that's the first page of the real estate, or excuse me, of the Regulation and Licensing Department's budget. One of the things I would point you to there, and let's see if my cursor will let me do that. Yeah, here's Regulation and Licensing Department budget, and then underneath it here is one of our divisions, the construction industry. Actually, it's 2, construction industries and manufactured housing. You'll see there under the headings, general fund comes up, and it has specific amounts listed out: personnel services and employee benefits, contractual services, other expenses, and then other financing uses. It's a breakdown of how much money is appropriated either from general funds, or other state funds, or internal services transfers for the total budget of that division. The total amount, and those numbers are in thousands, by the way, to that. So that's how a division would be budgeted. Down below would have been alcohol and gaming, now just the alcohol, alcoholic beverages division. But we'll go to the next page though. And we'll see, well, back up. So we're going to do to the Real Estate Commission budget. Now again, this is 2014. And there's a typo there, it says 2016, but it's FY. Boards and commissions. And so here we see a budget directly for the Real Estate Commission. And just like we saw for the divisions before, here were actual appropriations specifically for the Real Estate Commission. Now that's how the budget was done through 2015, 2014 bill for the FY 2015. Starting in FY 2015, however, things changed. House Bill 2, the General Appropriations Act 2015 for the 2016 budget. And first page just shows you that's the General Appropriations Act 2015. About 100 pages in, we find the RLD budget page. And again, it starts off like the bill had in 2014. Here is the Regulation and Licensing Department budget. There's construction industries and manufactured housing, one division of that budget. And it breaks it down by each of those terms, just like it had in 2014. But here's where things change. Starting in the 2015 bill, instead of listing each of the individually administratively attached boards and commissions, or individual boards and commissions, there is one appropriation in total for all of boards and commissions. See if those numbers are much larger than the numbers of thousands we had seen for the real estate commission before, because this appropriation covers all 28 administratively attached boards and commissions, and actually 2 other boards and commissions that are part of the RLD directly that are under our boards and commissions division. So here are those same numbers listed: general fund, other state funds, internal service agreements, transfers, for a total budget for boards and commissions. I did not put on slides 50 more pages, or any the rest of the budget here, because there are no more slides or there are no more provisions in that act that list out each individual board or commission. Since 2015 on, the legislature has done the appropriations for all boards and commissions under the RLD under one lump sum. That's the appropriation. Now, working with DFA and working with Department of Finance and Administration, working with our Administrative Services Division staff, our staff are able to go in and essentially divide back out those numbers and say, okay, how many boards and commissions do we have? How many staff members do we have? How many people are working on these topics? And can come up with how much of that money, of this total appropriation, will actually come out of the real estate commission's non-reverting fund. But when the legislature appropriates it, they appropriate all of that money to the RLD alone. It is, again, the expression of the legislature on how that funding is to be allocated, and also that's how our staffing is allocated based off those numbers. And it is all with the RLD. Since the enactment of the General Appropriations Act, this is how a single appropriation is made. You do not have in the legislative bill each year a budget for the Real Estate Commission. Over the last several years, since 2015, numerous times the RLD staff have put together a budget for the Real Estate Commission and other boards and commissions, where we go through and divvy up basically how much of the money is going to be for each of those boards and commissions, and then where that means it's being drawn from. So the money being used to pay for the Real Estate Commission gets drawn from the non-reverting fund for the Real Estate Commission, just like each of those other 28 and 27 other administratively attached boards and commissions are funded. Let's go now to FY25. This is House Bill 2 from 2024, General Appropriations Act. And what you're going to see is essentially the same exact thing you saw in the 2015 Act. First page of the Act, then we go to the RLD section of the Act. And here's the boards and commissions appropriation. Again, down below boards and commissions, I tried to highlight some of, sometimes it would let me do some highlighting and sometimes not. But there's boards and commissions as a division of RLD. Here's cannabis control below it as another division. Again, what we're seeing is one appropriation for all of the boards and commissions administratively attached to the RLD. In conclusion, based on the statutes of the state of New Mexico, the superintendent of RLD is charged with employing the staff for all 28 administratively attached boards and commissions. They are employees of the RLD. They are then assigned by the superintendent to provide services to each of the administratively attached boards and commissions. Superintendent's authorized by the statutes to make determinations on hiring those staff and making the assignment of duties to those staff to support the boards and commissions. Superintendent Bailey is committed to providing quality administrative services and support to every single one of our boards and commissions. We are certainly committed to providing as the best services we can to the Real Estate Commission. I will say that, since September of last year, Melissa Salazar, our director for the Boards and Commissions Division, and myself have been meeting with President Gilman each month, and we've had numerous hours now of discussions about staffing for the Real Estate Commission. We've talked some about budget for the Real Estate Commission. Talked about her desires for how she would like to see staffing handled and investigations handled. And we have made commitments to try to hire people as best we can with the experience that we can, just like we do for every other administratively attached board and commission. But here's the facts on that. I've seen heard the statements. I have seen some of the comments that were posted that you must have individually assigned and trained investigators and licensing staff for each individual board and commission. That is simply not possible given the staffing and budget for the RLD. There are 28 administratively attached boards and commissions plus other boards and commissions that work with the RLD. The staffing numbers, which go into it, but there is no possibility that we can have individual staff for every single one of those boards and commissions who are specially trained just to do that board and commission and never touch anything else. We do pool the resources of those investigators. We pool the resources of our support staff that are working on the licensing side of things. Essentially all staff in our boards and commissions division are now cross-trained on at least at least two or more boards or commissions that they work with. And that is, under current staffing and budgetary provisions, certainly going to be how we're going to proceed. Because that's the only way we can operate and get all of the individual boards and commissions staff and support. We have to be able to utilize those folks for more than just one board or commission. Now, does that mean we don't want specially trained people for each board and commission? No, absolutely not. We do want to have people who have expertise and have skills and knowledge of your industry. But we have to have the ability to service all of those boards and commissions. And as intricate and detailed as the Real Estate Commission is, I got to tell you, just about every other board and commission feels that their industry is intricate and detailed and important. The psychologists think that, the real estate appraisers think that, the barbers and cosmetologists think that, the podiatrists, I think podiatrists actually went to health recently. Yeah, every single one of our industries, dental board, okay? I think we would all agree they're all important and they all need staffing and support. The legislature has assigned that to the RLD to provide that staffing and support. We're committed to doing the best we can to support each and every one of those boards and commissions, including the Real Estate Commission. That's where the law stands on what an administratively attached agency board or commission means. Be happy to take questions and discuss it with you. Again, I'm not your legal counsel, but I'm going to do my best to tell you the law as I believe it.
Thank you. Who wants to start questions? Okay, so I will. When you say it's impossible, it was possible before.
No, ma'am, it was not.
This is a new thing, that
No,
the Real
ma'am, it's
Estate
not.
Commission didn't have dedicated real estate experienced investigators.
Madam President, we've discussed this at length in my office and online. There were staff members of the RLD who had that experience previously. Those staff members were able to provide services to the Real Estate Commission, and I'm pleased that they were able to provide those services. But to a degree, that was luck. That was the fact that those people had been hired and assigned to provide services to the Real Estate Commission. The fact that we had to pool services, investigators and others, and assign people to do other types of boards and commissions as well, none of those staff members, at least not since 2015, were truly only assigned to the Real Estate Commission. Each of them could have been pulled at any moment and given other assignments and duties to carry out. They were employees of the RLD. We tried to utilize employees with those skills to the best means that we could, but they were not real estate commission employees. Even if that's how they saw themselves or how they thought of themselves, they were always regulation and licensing department.
Well, I
employees
understand the chain of
assigned.
command on employees. I don't disagree with you there, because the Real Estate Commission is not autonomous at this time. And so we don't have the ability to hire our own staff. But as long as I've remembered, real estate investigators have never been shared across boards. So if you say it had to be done because of staffing, that must mean budget. And we were never informed regarding the budget that there was a budget problem, that our investigators would all of a sudden be shared across boards. I think that's one of the disconnects that we have. Is I understand to some extent the law. I have some questions about those quotes as well. But it doesn't feel like you're totally in support of the Real Estate Commission. There's been situations that come up that don't feel like we're collaborating, that you're not really serving us for our needs. Our needs, and I've said this in meetings, I've said it to you privately, I've said it publicly, our needs are so unique. I can't think of another board, and I tried this weekend, I looked at every single one of those. I can't think of another board that cooperates and competes with each other at the same time as far as the licensees. You can't have a transaction, generally speaking, without at least 2 licensees. And so our needs are different. Real estate is incredibly different than any other profession. And unless you're hip deep in it, you really do not understand the nuances. You can read the law all day long, and you can read rules all day long, but unless you know the nuances of what should have happened at this point in time, maybe I should ask that question. As an investigator, you're not going to get it. And with all due respect, I would hate to be an investigator for an accountant problem or a body art problem. I wouldn't have the slightest, even if I read their rules, which I did. I kind of glanced over other boards' rules, and they're fascinating, but I wouldn't have a clue how to approach it, because I've never had a conflict with an accountant. I've never had a conflict with a body art artist, so I wouldn't know the questions to ask. So I guess I'm coming from the position that if you truly had to replace or share our investigators and our staff with other boards, that must have equaled a budget problem?
In part, I would say that it's I call it a budget problem, that are limitations to the budget. There is only so much money approved, and it's more than one kind of aspect goes in here. You have to have not only the money appropriated, but you also have to have the positions appropriated, or a designation of those positions. So we have only so many full-time equivalent positions, FTEs, for the RLD, for our boards and commissions division. And then, you get into discussions back and forth with the legislature. They'll say, well, you have vacant positions. Only had enough money to pay 20 of them to start with, then that 30 number, as a state agency, you don't want to give those up, because if I do get more appropriation next year, then I want to be able to have that money to actually hire positions. So it's always a juggling back and forth with your both assigned or appropriated number of positions, and then the money that you're appropriated. In the past, I would say, without having dug that deeply into that topic, but the staffing that was assigned to the Real Estate Commission may have been a little higher level or per capita, let's just say, staffing was better for the Real Estate Commission than some of our other boards.
Because there's more of us.
Well, there are, although I will tell you that we license over 500,000 entities.
Well,
throughout
that's
the
nice. We only
RLD.
care about
So,
ourselves.
exactly. I get that. And I
We're
think I
very
even told you when
narcissistic.
we were meeting. I mean,
We only
I
care about
respect
us.
the fact that you care about your
Well, of course,
industry.
the
You
governor put
should.
me here for a reason.
Exactly. I mean,
So-
I fully expect and respect that you're going to care more about your commission than some other.
What about the real estate recovery fund? We haven't, again, we have not seen a budget for 3 years. We've asked for it. We got sort of a hint of it last time. I'm still waiting for it to make sense. That's another agenda item. But again, if all this is happening because of shortfalls, I mean, the state of New Mexico is, I'll use a polite phrase, it's very wealthy. And so I don't know why we're being told that we're starving when I don't think we are.
I would agree with you that certainly in the last few years, the state has had funds. The legislature decides how they're going to spend those, how they're going to allocate those. They've made some decisions to reserve some funds, which frankly, I think is a smart idea, to save some money for a rainy day. Should they have spent more money on the RLD? Should they have spent more money on the real estate commission? That's a policy decision that they get to make. As attorney for the agency, it's not my call.
The cannabis division is under RLD, right?
Yep.
Budget. Recovery fund, what's going on? We need money for other proposals that I have on the agenda. This doesn't feel like a friendly atmosphere. Contentious, and I don't like that. I was not put in this position to do this kind of stuff. I was there to review cases and help the public and help professional real estate people. I feel like it's been a battle of wills and that you're all trying to starve us out. I'm just speaking for me, and I'll let everybody else speak, but it doesn't feel like we're on the same page. And part of this administratively attached does talk about, with shared agreement, we're going to help each other find good employees. And, there's never been any of that. I still don't know who does what when. We have new investigators. We don't know about it. That's going to be another agenda item. So I'll let anybody else wants to speak.
Madam President, I would like to ask, do you know what the Mr. Carter and Mr. Bryant were hired for, and did they specifically, were they real estate commission investigators?
I do not know the specifics about when they were hired. They were with the RLD for a number of years. They were assigned to real estate commission primarily. I can't speak to whether they were ever assigned to other positions or other assistants during the course of their employment.
Because at one point, we actually had 3 investigators that attended our meetings and investigated our cases and seemed very engaged with our industry. And I feel that it's this last year, totally in disarray. We have people that really don't know. And that's vital. And I agree with President Kilman that it's very difficult to cross-train and be the investigator for body piercing, hairdressers, whatever, and the practicing of real estate. Totally different, and really not anywhere near the same type of industries or education.
I would not argue at all that there are distinctions between every different board and commission that we have. They are all intricate in their own way. One of the things that Madam President and I have discussed a couple of times, the fact that my background before coming to the RLD was primarily in law enforcement and prosecution. I am very familiar with working with investigative divisions or detectives divisions within law enforcement agencies, not only here but in other states. I can tell you that in some ways, it is great if you have a big enough department that you have people who are trained in every specific. Very uncommon, at least in law enforcement. Sheriff's departments, police departments, unless they are very large. They have a pool of investigators who are assigned to the cases as they come in, and they have to do the best they can with the training they have. Now, do you try to get extra training for people in certain areas? Of course you do. I mean, of course they do in law enforcement. But a detective takes the cases that land on his desk or her desk. Our investigators, and to a degree, have to do the same thing. And I think Kathleen may be able to speak to the part of your question better than I can.
Yes, Commissioner Hedinga. The prior investigators were not only assigned to Real Estate Commission, they have for years been assigned to the Accountancy Board as well as the Home Inspector Board. So their primary role was not just Real Estate Commission.
Well, I have a little background in law enforcement myself, and so I'm very aware of how detectives work and the agencies themselves. And so, and training is vital, and education is vital to that industry as well as ours. And if they're investigating cases that could possibly even have criminal activity, that's important. That everyone understand the basis of that, and it's not the same necessarily as the other boards and commissions. I really am a believer of that.
And I agree with you. I mean, the specifics and having that knowledge, one of the things that Madam President and I have discussed a couple of times is that if there are any training classes that you're aware of or other programs we could send people to, that we're very open to trying to get people scheduled for additional training. The last time we posted for an investigator position other than the GE coming on board, we didn't get anyone with a real estate license who applied for any of those positions. And I know Madam President was questioning that and whether or not we had advertised to the real estate market. And we talked about trying to find a better way to get the word out to, whether it's GAR or the commission or others, to try to get that word out to those who might be interested. And we still are interested in doing that if we can get people who are, have more training coming in. That's certainly an option for us. Now, as far as posting on the state personnel system and following legal requirements, we always have to do that. But there's nothing that stops us from being able to post those positions other places as well, to get the word out. So a website for an association or something, we could certainly get the word out additionally, as long as we still comply with the state requirements.
Yeah, I might suggest that you contact New Mexico Association of Realtors and advertise through them. They do regularly send out notifications, which they could notify the entire membership.
Yep.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Graham, I just have a few questions just for my own clarification as I'm learning a little bit about this. And so you're representing RLD, obviously, correct?
Yes.
All right. Can I ask you, as you did a great summary of the existing statute that governs this, have you identified any additional statute or promulgated regulations that might be pertinent to this subject?
Directly related to this subject, no. Those are the laws that I felt were directly related to defining administrative attachment for this board or commission to the regulation and licensing department.
Okay, anything quasi-related, but that's pretty much it, you saw?
There are other statutes for other state agencies that have boards and commissions that are administratively attached to them. What I was looking for is what's the general law, what's the most specific law to the RLD. That's
Okay.
the one it's going to control.
All right. And I also appreciated hearing the budgeting history on this. If you go back to SB 313 back for FY15, when they had a specific budget for this agency or this entity, how was it broken out then? Does anyone have an institutional memory to know whether there were assigned investigators at that time?
I do not know that right now. What I can tell you from what Kathleen just shared with us is that those individuals who were assigned as investigators for the Real Estate Commission also were assigned to other boards and commissions.
And I'd open it up to anyone else. Is there any information or history going back? Does anyone remember that? How was it structured? Got to eat the mic. So my question is, does anyone have any memory of how the budget was structured, since there was in statute a budget at that time?
I can look into that for you, Commissioner. I myself haven't been here since July. I've only been here since July of this last year.
I think that might be helpful just to understand back then when there was a clear budget, whether we had something clear for like that. All right.
Let me just inquire to one of our other compliant investigators.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Vasquez, yes, they were assigned FTEs per board, but in 2015 they put them all in one pot, and so we're all.
I do
together.
understand that. I'm just trying to understand the history. So previously, back when this budget was run through SB 313, there was, according to you, assigned FTE specific for this board,
Yes, that's correct.
including investigators.
Correct.
Okay.
The record, I don't know if Kathy gave her name. This Kathy Ortiz, our Deputy Director for the Regulation License, for the Boards and Commissions Division of
Oh, yeah,
Regulation.
she's been around a while.
call
She
her.
should remember.
Kathy has been here quite a bit, even longer than me, and I've been with the RLD over 9 years now, and I'm starting to become one of the old men around here.
Yeah,
But,
I understand how
Kathy's
that
got me
works.
beat.
Can I just ask, I apologize, I haven't looked up. Has anyone looked at what is the executive recommendation for all 28 boards and commissions right now?
I don't have that with me.
I'm not sure myself.
I'm legal
either,
counsel, not the budget guy. So.
Okay. All right. And let me just throw something else out there. I know this is not under RLD. OCD, Oil and Conservation Division, which is under MNREC, does have a mechanism that allows industry to pay into their oversight and to help fund their regulatory side. Is there any mechanism like that that could be employed here?
Not that I'm aware of under any current law for the RLD or any of our administratively attached boards or commissions. There are what we call non-reverting funds that are come out of basically licensing fees and regulatory. Sometimes regulatory fees or fines can go into those. Most fines go to the general school fund. It's a different section. But the non-reverting funds for just about every one of the boards and commissions come out of the licensing fees each time, for each separate different board or commission. So in a way, I would say that's the industry paying into its own supervision. But I think you're describing maybe something different where industry could maybe donate to or contribute to.
Have, like OCD, they have a fee system where industry pays into it, which also helps pay for the oversight of the industry itself.
Well, the non-reverting funds that come out of licensing fees or that are funded by licensing fees essentially do that same thing. I mean, the fund is there, like, and I forget the exact name of one for the Real Estate Commission, but the Real Estate Commission's fund then gets tapped to pay the bills of the Real Estate Commission. Yes. I'm not being clear. I'm seeing the look on your face, and I'm not being clear. Real Estate Commission, just like about every other individual administratively attached board or commission to the RLD, is then tapped by the legislature to help fund the operation of Real Estate Commission.
So are the funds, he's saying, if I understand correctly, the funds, the licensing fees go into a non-reverting fund that the legislature can then tap into.
Yes, the legislature then appropriates out of that.
So does that just go back into the general fund?
No, it doesn't go into the general fund. We're getting into some pretty intricate law regarding how state finances work. But non-reverting funds by industry are not truly non-reverting. If you think of it as like a bank account that nobody else can ever touch. And the reason for that is that no one legislature can ever bind another legislature.
Absolutely.
Every single time they have just as much authority. So I can pass a law this year that puts money into an account and says it's going to sit there and we're only ever going to use it for X purpose.
Until a future legislature decides.
And next year, and again, I told you how the budget bills are adopted as an act each year. Well, for the purposes of that 1 year, that act then controls, and so they then go in and appropriate money out of those funds to be spent for operations.
Okay, Mr. Graham, I apologize. I probably went down the rabbit hole on that one. I guess I was just asking, is there a mechanism where the funds industry funds that are provided by members of the industry, whether it be fee system or whatever, could be used directly to help ensure that there are dedicated investigators?
If the legislature chose to do that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't really have any questions. I guess I have a comment about the last time Director Salazar had provided a budget. She had indicated that there was misuse or lack of the relief funds. I think for real estate, she was looking at one of the line items and the funds were not there. And she was going to be doing a complete audit on that. And I don't think we received an update. And so I'm kind of curious as to what happened with those funds. What was the outcome of that particular audit? Because that's also a contribution to our real estate budgetary that could impact, what can happen for our department. And so if those funds, it would be nice to try to find out what happened with that and where that money went and if it's been found and reallocated for us.
I have not been involved with that myself, but we can, Seth, taking some notes and certainly get back to you on that.
Commissioner Katnack, Amanda Lewis speaking here. Director Salazar did mention, I don't believe it was the term as misappropriation. It was the funding code that was built into the system was pulling the fund and it just was putting it in the overall real estate commission rather than separating it out. So I do know that is something Director Salazar is looking at. I have been tasked also with pulling the number of initial licenses and renewals so we can figure out the dollar amount and put it into the recovery fund. So it was simply a funding code, just went to the overall real estate commission rather than the simple recovery fund.
I see.
And as soon as we get those numbers, we will provide them to the commission.
So with that recovery fund, what's allocated to be utilized? What can be spent? What's that recovery fund used for? Once that money is found or once it's been accounted for appropriately, what can we use that fund for?
Sorry, we're mic sharing here. Give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It is very specific in the statute what those funds can be used for. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but it does say that the funds will remain in the recovery fund in case of an event that the money is needed. And then if not, then if there's over 450,000, then that money will get back transferred into the real estate commission fund, but I don't have the specifics off the top of my head.
And as a board, when we do find the balance of this recovery fund, would we be able to participate in how it's being spent, or do we have a say in how it's being allocated at all?
Well, the use is very specific in the statute. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
So it is in your own statute. We can look at that.
That would probably be something I'd like us to take a look at, just so that way we would be able to be aware as to what that fund is for, how it can be allocated, and if it's going to be utilized to benefit the need right now, because as we all know, we have an issue.
Just one more from me. Chief Counsel Graham. Did you cite, and I couldn't see the slides. Can we get these slides after the program? New Mexico Statute 9.1.7. Did you quote that one?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
And that's one that I explained to you as the general statement on administrative attachment. Then you have to look to any contradictory language in a more specific statute. That's when you go to the RLD Act.
But administratively attached is kind of a general legalized definition.
Well, it's specific to that act, and then you take that to the RLD Act. So, said you start with the general and you work your way down to the more specific anytime there's any conflict between the two.
Does anybody have any more questions? I appreciate you coming here and answering our questions. I trust we can count on you to be available for more answers.
You know, I'll do my best. I think there was a meeting a time or two back where I was on the agenda, but no one had actually talked to me about being on the agenda. So just say, you know, if you get on my calendar, and I'll do everything I can to try to be available to you. But yeah, I just need to have some advance notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. We can move on to the next agenda item if you want to, Madam President.
So this is a budget request discussion item with possible action. I would like to see reports provided quarterly at each meeting, a budget update, what's going on, where's it being spent, and where we can spend it. I think that's in statute as well, to have those kind of updates. And since we didn't get one for 3 years, we need to get caught up. We could determine the format of those reports. They could either, obviously in writing, but they could be formal or informal. But I'd like it addressed at every meeting. I think would be appropriate to the constituents and the board members. If you'd like.
I move that we have a budget presented to us in writing at a minimum of quarterly.
I second.
Can you call the roll?
Yes, Madam President. President DeLee-Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, he's absent. Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
So the request has been approved unanimously at this time.
The next budget item request is the request of a new position to be assigned as hearing officers. We have the ability to assign an administrative law judge to take over the role of being hearing officers. Most of us have been a hearing officer, and it's quite the job, and it's quite a big responsibility, and some hearings are 10 minutes and some are all day. There's a lot to being a hearing officer, a lot of responsibility, and then a lot of duties afterwards. There is the provision that we could have an administrative law judge assigned for that purpose. It is a position that's usually filled by retired judges, retired attorneys, and it works well in other departments. I'm not sure of the cost of that, so we would have to review the cost of having administrative law judges serve that. I know that Commissioner Katnack, you've been a hearing officer. I have. I would find it to be a huge benefit, both time-wise and liability-wise, to have an administrative law judge be a hearing officer for these hearings. Any discussion? I move that we look into having an administrative law judge position assigned, and I can get with the DOJ's representative about that process to reaching out to get costs involved. Yes.
Madam President, I would suggest that for most of our other divisions, we do that through contract, professional services contracts, as opposed to hiring someone. So you do it on an as-needed basis by contract.
Yes, of course.
So just for your
Right.
consideration.
So I have a question. So without us seeing a budget, how do we know if we can afford something like that?
Again, I don't have your budget in front of me. What we would have to do is look at what is available under that section. I believe we call it 300s, I think, for professional services contracts. And so our administrative services division, working through Director Salazar, should be able to come up with that type, what money is left in that category.
So is it up to us to obtain that information, or RLD will obtain the information and get the contract organized in that capacity? What's the process? What do we do with that?
Kind of two steps there. One would be determining what kind of funding is available for that area. And that through our staff at RLD, we can work with you on seeing what kind of funding is available for the year. The second step is the contract would actually go through the RLD, and that's how it's all contracts for boards and commissions are done. Because again, the money gets appropriated to the RLD, so the contract has to always be with the RLD. But I can tell you, I've got form hearing officer, administrative, professional services for legal services, and hearing officer contracts out there. So putting together a contract's not hard at all. Just kind of going, and what it would take would be a discussion with the commission about any specifics you wanted in those contracts, any kind of specialized training or background that would be part of the contract language that we would put out. If you do them for, right now, the law reads $60,000 or less, which is usually what we do those types of professional services contracts for, that generally will cover multiple hearings during the course of the year. Some, and it just depends on the scope of the hearing, but some might cost $10,000, $15,000 for the hearing officer's full services from the start of coordinating a hearing through actually holding the hearing and issuing a report. Some, depending on the complexity, might be more. So, but if you don't exceed the $60,000 limit, then you don't have to put it out for a request for proposals and bid. You can basically contact some of the folks that we know who are interested in those types of things, do them for other boards or commissions, and see who might be willing to sign on. I think we would want the commission's agreement or approval on whoever we issued that contract.
That was my next question, if we would be participating in that review process.
Yeah, honestly, other than perhaps the Board of Pharmacy, I don't know that I've been involved in doing one of those for a particular board or commission. Like our alcohol beverage control does them, the financial institutions division does them. I handle most of those. But it would seem to me that it would be very smart if we were going to try to employ one specifically for real estate, that we would at least get the commission's input on whether this is someone that you know of or that you think might have special skills. I agree with that.
Thank you.
So there's a motion on the floor. Was there a second?
Second.
Okay. Call roll. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. President Lee Kilman.
Yes.
Vice President Smith is absent. Secretary Hedinga.
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack. And Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, we have unanimously passed your vote.
Thank you. The next budget request would be a line item budget request for office inspections. Haven't had office inspections in a long time. My thought, and I'd like to gather some input on that, a lot of these office inspections would be best served not only for advertising, but for investigating trust accounts, qualifying broker lists of policies and procedures. Important issue in a lot of our investigations, and I think office inspections for trust accounts would be a great investment. So I'd like to see a line item budget for office inspections, in person or virtual. Obviously, we have to find somebody who would do those office inspections and the logistics of it, because it goes statewide. But that's my proposal. Discussion?
From what I understand, again, budget is an issue. So I think once we get those
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Second.
Did you want the motion first before the second? Yeah. I move that we work on getting, we have a line item budget request for the office inspections for both virtually and in person.
Oh, second.
Thank you, Commissioner. Madam President, we have a unanimous approval to move your request for office
I
inspections.
don't think you took a vote.
Oh, you didn't take a vote?
We
Oh.
didn't vote. We just did a motion and a second.
Oh, okay. So we go ahead and take roll then. Madam President DeVille Gilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, who's absent, Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam President, we have it unanimously
Thank you.
passed your vote to move for office inspections.
The next item on the agenda, NMREC PDF rulebook. I know it exists out there. It's been modified to have the existing commissioners' updated information. There's certainly not very many rule changes that are in there, so I think it's a safe bet that it could be published. I'm getting a lot of requests from educators to have it available, not just the rules and statutes that are currently there, but this rule book makes it an easier way to find relevant and relevant information that QBs need and that educators need and that members need. When they need to look up a quick rule, it's easy to find. And it also has nice citations and former cases that I think are helpful, that help the people, the readers reading it, understand the rules and statutes better. It is also part of the statute that the rule book be available. And so the PDF is there. I would also request as part of this that and this is open for discussion, I'm not throwing you in the oil just yet, but to have all of the commissioners' contact information in that rule book available for constituents to get a hold of us should they need to get a hold of us, and posted on the Real Estate Commission website for the use of members, constituents, the public.
I move that the most current rule book be on the website with all the commissioners' contact information for the ease of the members of our associations and licensing.
A second.
I'll go ahead and take roll.
Mm-hmm.
Madam President DeVille Gilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, he's absent, Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, we have a motion adopted unanimously.
Thank
for
you.
the PDF rulebook.
And I'll be glad to coordinate the copy that I have that was given to me by a prior secretary that was kind of stopped midway, and compare notes on it and get that published with the IT department. This next item on the agenda, license screening by realtor associations. Sometimes when a licensee's license has been suspended or gone inactive for whatever reason, if that licensee is a qualifying broker, their associate brokers are immediately considered inactive by statute. Sometimes I don't think the realtor associations know that this has happened. And I know it's probably way too much to ask the licensing department to reach out to each individual realtor association to give them an advisory that, you know, Rhonda's license has expired, take her out of the multiple listing system. But I would say that it's probably a good idea to put out an advisory letter from the New Mexico Real Estate Commission to realtor associations, understanding that half of the licensees are not realtors, but half of them are. an advisory letter that goes out to realtor associations to remind them to create auditing procedures so that they can keep up with this. I'm not here to dictate how often they need to go into their database. I know GAR is the biggest, but some kind of an auditing system so that if a licensee's, a qualifying broker especially, they come off the system, all of those ABs have to come off the system until somebody else picks them up. And in that, we could also have some procedures that talks to what they could do. Instead of going to a new brokerage, you could get another QB to come in and temporarily be assigned so that those ABs are not left out in the wilderness. But I would say that I would like to see a note come from RLD on behalf of the New Mexico Real Estate Commission to associations. I think we have 10 MLSs in the state of New Mexico. So it's not going to be too many letters, but at least get in touch with each CEO, each chair of the licensing, the membership departments in each association, just to make them a little more aware of this, because I think we have all forgotten about that nuance of licenses being revoked, suspended, left out in the cold, expired, retired. Because I personally have seen some that have dropped off and they're still active in the Realtor Association systems. So again, that's protecting the public, because that can cause even more problems. So that's my thought. If you have any thoughts on that. An advisory letter. Everybody's agreeing with me today. Okay.
Okay, if I can summarize that, I move that we request RLD to send a notification to the association of when it's discovered that a QB's license has expired or been suspended, so that they are made aware to notify that that company that they may need to make other arrangements. Did I summarize that?
I might amend that to say any licensee whose license gets,
So any licensee that they have been either they are expired or suspended or revoked.
Yeah. Give me a second. Okay. I second.
Okay, I'll go ahead and take a roll. Madam President DeVille Kilman,
yes.
Vice President Smith, he's not here. Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, we have a motion adopted unanimously to push forward for the license screening by Realtor Association.
Thank you. And I'll be glad to be the headmaster of that. I have been to ASO. My next, the next agenda item, universal form and project with project completion deadline. So the universal form is not universally enjoyed. And so I think there are errors in usability. I don't personally use it, but I hear from people who use it, and it's not one of their happy moments. And I appreciate those that have put the universal form together, but now that I actually sat down one day and tried every scenario to try and be the person filling it out. So I started seeing all sorts of broken bones in there. And if I was really trying to fill it out to do something new, I would be lost. I had one constituent get a hold of me that all she wanted to do was move home. It's like I'm moving from my office space to home. She never did get it done. And when I looked at the form, I wouldn't know how to do that. So I would like to put together a task force of Ms. Henniga, because she was involved in the first form, and get together and just come up with perhaps a new form that's more understandable, kind kind of like in the Open Meetings Act where it says an average person can understand it. I find myself to be a little bit below average, so I'd like something that I could understand as well. So I would propose that Commissioner Hennigan and I get together and do a small task force to put together a proposed new form, put it through some practice runs, and get a new form published that's a little more user-friendly.
Can I add to that? Maybe even dummy it down just a little bit, as I know that sounds crazy, but as simple as forms being transfer form, and it be called transfer form. So that way people are looking for a transfer form, they could go to the website and because that's what they're doing. They're not looking for a universal form to do a transfer. And so I think just as simple as simplifying it as what those forms are entailing, that's all it needs to entail. It shouldn't be a combination of things happening on that form. It needs to be literally just a transfer form, a renewal form, you know, or whatever the case is. Does that make sense? Okay.
So I move that we have a task force of President Davig Kilman and myself to work on the updating of the universal form to a more user-friendly form or forms.
I second.
Go ahead and call roll. Madam President Leak-Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, he is absent. Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, we have a motion adopted unanimously for a task force and to move forward with a new form.
Thank you. There is a provision in the rules to create a property management best practices advisory committee that's missing right now from the commission. And I think it's very important. Property management does take up a good portion of our complaints. And again, with trust accounts, and I think it's time with the climate these days with property management and everything that entails with the workload, it might even lower the workload of complaints. And so I would propose that we create a property management best practices advisory committee according to, and it's the rule 16.61.24.8, create that best practices property management advisory committee.
Well, what does that look like?
Well, since Commissioner Smith isn't here, my first choice would be to have him part of that, but I haven't had the ability to ask him yet because he is out with the flu. But I think, and I don't know the structure of an advisory committee at this point in time, whether we have to name anybody or not, but I think it could be a commissioner who is familiar with property management. And just like the rules committee, we could reach out to some property managers and professionals to be part of that advisory committee.
So he's already part of the complaint committee also. So would you be talking about both of those committees?
Don't know yet,
Okay.
but maybe, yeah, we can structure it so that the workload is fair.
And just to add to that, Commissioner,
To appoint an advisory committee for property management best practices.
second.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and call roll. Madam President Leak-Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, he's absent. Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, we have a motion to adopt it unanimously to move forward property management best practices.
Thank you. Notice of noncompliance, case number, there's one more action item, but we can go on this one. case number REC 2023-00293-COM. It's given the individual an opportunity to speak. I don't see that they're here. So we'll make a note and take that. Right, I have to do that now. Sorry, public awareness program. That's kind of goes back with the another agenda item, but adopt a public awareness program. And this would be, I've been seeing these really fabulous, whoever's doing it, I'd like to hire them for myself. These RLD updates in social media. Did you know about this and did you know about that? And I know we had one that went through for real estate and there was some errors in there that needed to be corrected, but I would love to see that start up again. And you could consult with any of us to give us, to give you some material for it, because I think that's a great way for people to learn, because I see those things all the time. And maybe just like once a month, did you know about this? Did you know that that's a violation to do this? Did you know this is where you can go to talk about things? So I would like to take an action that we take a motion and vote to get that started again with RLD. I don't know who it is I talked to there to get that done, but whoever's doing the advertising is pretty darn good. So I would like to see that happen. And I think any of us would be willing to create content or give the idea for content. You ever say it? Do I hear a motion?
I move that we reactivate the public awareness program, and an attempt to do it once a month, as far as a did you know kind of update for the licensees.
Second.
Okay, I'll go take roll. Madam President DeLeave-Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, who's absent, Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, we have a motion adopted unanimously to push forward for a public awareness program. And I think, Commissioner, you mentioned being it once a month. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once a month. I'm not sure how often those go out for the other departments, but
I can look into that, Madam President.
okay. And then the complaint committee discussion, even though Commissioner Smith is not here, I guess we can just talk about the complaint committee structure. Again, the thing I'm always worried about is I personally would hate to see anybody but a commissioner do that, because I don't think the public needs to be exposed to the private information that we have in executive session. And anybody serving on the complaint committee has to have the information about who they're looking at. And it does come into, does that commissioner have to then recuse themselves because they know the person? Real estate's a small community for 12,000 people. And it's like a small town. And so I think that would, I'd like to open it up to discussion on how you think the complaint committee is going.
Really, I think it's a question for Matt. I think he's the one that needs to be the one to decide how he feels. If he needs extra support from one of us, then I think that's something that he needs to express, so that way we can be able to facilitate that. But since he's not here, I don't know. Other than it's helpful to have the investigators participate just as much, to have the background information, because again, I think today we're going to be reviewing 24 cases. That's a lot of cases in one day to sit and be able to absorb. And so any additional support is helpful. So again, I think that's something he needs to be able to say. I don't know how you feel.
I would agree with Commissioner Katnick that I think that his input into that background and investigating is vital. And if it's going to be any additional person attached to that with him, they got to have the same knowledge as he has, because they can't thoroughly evaluate what really happened.
So I move that we table this discussion until the next meeting when Commissioner Smith can attend.
I'll add it to the next agenda, Madam President.
Um,
I'll second that.
I'll go ahead and take roll. Madam President Lee Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, who's absent, Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Madam President, we have a motion to table the complaint committee
Thank you.
conversation.
I did get notification from Attorney General Moffett that we can review and approve the minutes that the other commissioners did not receive. If we want to take a short break, if we, you could send those minutes to the rest of them, the EAC, because I'm concerned that we wouldn't be able to approve actions that are on those minutes.
Okay. I did send out the minutes to the board members if they hadn't received those on last week. But if you wanted to take a short break to review those. we
Yeah,
can get
just so
those
they
approved.
can have time to review them.
Certainly.
It only takes, now, we do have public comment coming up, and I don't want to keep people here. If you're needing to run out, we can do public comment and then review the minutes. Is there anybody here that needs to leave that wants to stay for public comment? Okay, so we'll take a short, 10-minute break for the other commissioners to review the minutes, and then we'll come back at 11:10.
Okay. All right, the time is 11:01. We're going to take a short recess. If you can go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you.
Madam President.
Kind of exciting, isn't it? You should see the one I saw. We're going to go back into session here shortly. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Connie read mine and she had a copy. He read them. Yeah. I read them. I had a copy. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have time to read them. Find Alina. Okay. There she is. I don't if we can approve. Who that is? You're so popular. Okay. Back to. So it was, if I'm not mistaken, it's on C, Connie. C, approval of these minutes, December 11th and January 6th. Yeah, is that right? Okay. Okay, Mr. Bryant, are we ready? Approval of the EAC report and the minutes for the EAC December 11th and January 6th minutes, correct?
Correct. I think did you have to review the AAC, or were we talking about the past?
This is the EAC minutes.
Okay, for the December 11th, 2024 and January 6th, 2025.
Correct. I move that they be approved.
Second.
I'll go ahead and call roll. Madam President DeLee-Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, who's absent, Secretary Hedinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack, and Commissioner Vasquez.
Just clarification, what are we voting on here?
The minutes for the EAC December and January.
Yes.
Okay. Madam President, the December 11th, 2024 and January 6th, 2025 EAC meeting minutes are approved.
Thank you. The next is public comment. The commission president reserves the right to place time limits on the length of time each person is given if the schedule requires. I left it open past 10 minutes in case we had a lot of people. So depending on how many we have, we just don't want to keep everybody here till 7 p.m., but I want everybody to have their time. Members may ask questions for clarification, members of the board, but may not engage in substantive discussion or take formal action unless noticed in the meeting agenda. Comments will be taken under advisement and a response may be issued at a later time or may be placed on the agenda of a future public meeting for discussion or action. Who is our first speaker? I would never tell you no.
I applaud the effort, sir.
Mr. Arguelles? Be sure and speak loudly into the microphone.
Is that better? Yeah.
That's perfect. We want your microphone.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Bob Arguelles from Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm a licensed qualifying broker and also an associate broker. Thank you for this opportunity. And no to you, Sandy, because everybody will give their 10 minutes to McCoy and he'll be here forever. Madam Chair, I'd like to take just a minute, and while he's right here in front of me, I'd like to commend Scott Latham for all he does. I am a member of the Education Advisory Committee, and it's not just that role, but he has a huge role, and I know that he does a lot. And I don't know that everybody understands everything that he does, but he has been absolutely fantastic for us on the Education Advisory Committee. As well, I'd like to commend Jen Cody, who was the chair of the EAC, and Chair again has done a great job. And with a brand new little baby to boot. So, there was so much that I was hoping that Mr. Graham would stick around for a little bit, because I think that some of the things that he said, I think it's very indicative of some of the issues that a lot of licensed real estate brokers have with in New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Division. Anyway, I probably could put those better in a letter and do that. But one of the things that I think is really important is to keep in mind, I know you do as the board, is that every licensee is a business. Every individual licensee is their own business. And I think that most of us have a clear understanding of how business works. I was a little bit taken aback when he, in his slide presentation, indicated that it would almost appear as though there's no accounting for an individual board's or commission's budget. It just kind of falls into this big thing called, Senate Bill 313 or whatever it might be. Somewhere there is a budget for the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. I mean, we would be trying to make us believe that that doesn't exist is ludicrous. But I think that that's what's important for us to understand is that every licensee, and I think you indicated, Madam Chair, that there's at least 12, perhaps 13,000 of those. Every 3 years, each and every one of those licenses contributes $300 to the Real Estate Commission fund, right? So that's probably in the neighborhood of about $4 million, and I know that it varies by year, but it's a pretty good sum of money. And I think that we should have the expectation of our own, at least some of our own experts in that respect. And I also believe that we should have some say in who it is that represents us in certain positions. And I appreciate you continuing to bring that up and to go after that. I think that's important. Just a couple of other things that I just want to mention before I get into one other thing. There was a very active Property Management Advisory Committee up until about 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. I'd be more than happy to share that with you and some of those people that were on there, and they were very, very good, and it really worked very well. I do, to Commissioner Katnack's discussion about the relief fund, the recovery fund, I'm sorry. There's a very specific purpose for that, and it's by statute. It's for anybody that's been aggrieved by an action by a licensed real estate professional. You would always know that as the board, because you are the ones who will appropriate that money. That's how it is set up. It's not, they have to go through a lengthy legal process, and then it is the Real Estate Commission board that actually awards that money, and it's very specific. The issue that I have with that isn't just this fund of money that's disappeared. It's the fact that with every license renewal, every real estate broker pays $30. Well, there's a limit to both a limit at bottom and a top limit. The minimal amount that's to be in the recovery fund is $150,000. That's set by statute. The maximum is I think $450,000. But when it was initially set up, and just if I can, just a couple of things. 6129-19-1 New Mexico Real Estate Commission law refers to the creation of the Real Estate Education and Training Fund, and that was set up on July 1 of 2005. Balance in excess of $250,000 in the Real Estate Recovery Fund, right, spills over into that education fund. That's the importance of that. That's why these numbers matter, is that once it gets to a certain level, it spills into our education fund. Right now, if we were to ask the question, what is our education fund? Nobody even knows, right? And we're getting ready to ask for that for the core course boot camp, and then it goes on to my question is, why are we still collecting that money? Why are we still collecting it from licensees? Because if it's just for the state to come in and sweep those funds, or for it to just spill over to the real estate, to New Mexico Regulation Licensing Division, that's not fair. And it may only, $30 may not sound like a whole lot of money, but it's $30 on top of a gazillion other fees that real estate licensees have to pay. So I would ask that be, I know you're looking for those numbers. I know you're trying to get that, but it's more than just where is all this money going. We're still asked to continue to pay for it, and we don't even know where it goes. The last thing that I would ask, and I would request, and I would ask that this be put on the agenda. To hire an attorney to look into, on behalf of the Real Estate Commission and all of us, this issue of administrative attachment. Okay, that was asked once before. In fact, it's my understanding that it was actually something that could be approved. So again, whether you want to take that up or not, I would ask that you do, that you consider the NMRLD allowing you and appropriating to the board itself for legal representation to review that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy.
Good morning. Bill McCoy, Albuquerque, New Mexico. No, I'm not going to turn loose of this issue. I've rarely heard more eloquent doublespeak about state budgeting in my entire life. I understand the Appropriations Act, et cetera, and just following up on a couple of things Mr. Arguelles said, we were told as constituents in the last meeting that the recovery fund is only at 120,000. So respectfully, commissioners, whoever's not keeping control of that money is causing you to violate the statute that you're in charge of enforcing. Even if administratively attached means that some of that money goes unaccounted for. The biggest part of the definition of administratively attached is providing IT support, budgeting, etc. for the Real Estate Commission. Oh yeah, that investigative thing too. I'll finish with that. If I had a vendor providing that type of service to my company, they would be fired. I just let that sink in. No, I didn't misspeak. You cannot even find the numbers specifically for each board and commission in the Sunshine portal. A different law passed by the state of New Mexico to make sure that citizens could look at their budget and find out where is this money going. My personal experience with response from the RLD has been very interesting over the last month, a little more than a month. For any of you who have not signed the petition I am circulating, on the very front table next to the blue valise is a QR code for that. I have not begun pushing very hard, hoping I would see some resolution or movement at this meeting. But so far, somebody at RLD has received 404 emails in the last 30 days from people who have signed the petition. Not one response. Acceptable or not, you can make that determination. And proud to hear we have somebody on staff to help with investigations. All of those who are new to the business don't know that I'm old to the business and am very plugged in. But when the commissioners go into closed session today, they will be reviewing one case that is going to be derailed for lack of due process. And the failure is in whatever the investigative process is today, communication. I said it before and I'll say it again to close. I believe I am one of the 12,000 constituents of RLD. Since I have 4 licenses, maybe I'm 4 of those. I wouldn't pay for this service if I could volunteer. If you think that real estate is not unique, I think you're incorrect. And since I have received no response to over 400 emails to RLD, I'm going to turn my focus to the governor's office. And I have heard from past and present legislators who have asked how can they help. And I did receive really good information today in one little part of a presentation. And that is, I'm going to call all of my legislative folks back and say, looks like what you need to do is not approve the appropriations bill, which is where all the smoke and mirrors come together in this argument based upon what we heard today. As you can tell, I'm not passionate about this. I'm not going to let it go until the light gets to all the corners and RLD is doing what they're supposed to do. I unfortunately am going to have to hold, in some cases, because of the way our statute is worded, the real estate commission responsible for somebody else's failure. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Is there anyone else for public comment? It's now time for the commission to move to closed session for the purpose of discussing the disciplinary matters listed on the agenda. All brokers attending for continuing education credit may log off. You will not receive credit for closed session portions. Secretary Hennigan?
I move the Real Estate Commission enter closed session to discuss items listed on the agenda as authorized by the Licensing Administrative Adjudication Exemption of the Open Meetings Act, NMSA 10-15-1, H, 1, 3, and 7, authorizing closed session for matters related to issuance, suspension, renewal, or revocation of a license. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll go ahead and call roll. Madam President DeVliet-Gilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith, who's absent, Secretary Hennigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
The motion to enter closed session carries unanimously, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant.
That'll be 11:31 at the time.